The door was unlocked. That detail wouldn't seem important at first. People forget to lock their doors all the time, but the coffee was still warm. Not recently warm. Not lukewarm. Warm in the way that tells you someone was here. Seconds ago, steam still lifted from the mug in thin, twisting lines, curling into the air and disappearing before they could fully form. The smell of coffee hung heavy in the room, mixed with something else, something human. Soap, skin, presence, and yet there was no one there. No footsteps retreating down the hallway, no bathroom door closing. No voice from another room, just silence. The kind of silence that doesn't feel empty, but occupied, as if the room itself was waiting. This wasn't an abandoned house. This wasn't a crime scene. This wasn't chaos. Everything was normal. Too normal. The lights were on. A phone lay face down on the table. Screen dark. Shoes were lined neatly by the door, like their owner expected to return any moment. But the person who lived here was gone. No sign of struggle. No blood. No broken furniture. Not even a goodbye note. Just an absence so precise it felt deliberate. And this didn't happen decades ago. This didn't happen before technology. This happened now, in a world where we are never truly alone. Never and never offline. A world where your phone knows where you are before you do. Where cameras watch streets, hallways, elevators, where every purchase, every message, every movement leaves behind a trail. A digital shadow. And yet, some people still vanish so completely that not even their shadow remains. Not missing, not dead, erased. We like to believe disappearance belongs to the past. Two foggy seas and lost ships. Two pioneers and war zones. Two eras where records were sloppy and lives were poorly documented. But that belief is comforting. And comfort is dangerous because the truth is far more unsettling. Disappearing today requires less chaos than you think. Sometimes it requires none at all. Think about your own life for a moment. Your phone knows where you slept last night. Your bank knows what you ate. Your apps know what you searched at 2:30 a.m. Your devices know how long you paused on a photo. You exist as data. And if that data stops, do you still exist? That's the question at the center of these stories. Not who vanished. Not how. But what happens when existence itself shuts off? Investigators have a term for these cases. They don't use it publicly. They don't like how it sounds. They call them clean disappearances. Lives that end mid-sentence. No escalation. No warning signs. No unraveling. One moment, the person is there. The next, nothing. No last call. No suspicious searches. no financial anomalies. Their digital heartbeat just stops. And what terrifies investigators isn't how rare these cases are, it's how perfect they are. One detective described it like this: most missing people leave a mess, a trail, something we can pull on. But these cases feel like someone wiped a board clean and even erased the chalk dust. No direction, no motive, no timeline, just a gap where a human being used to be. The first hours after a disappearance are always the loudest. Phones ringing, doors knocking, names being called into empty rooms. Family members retrace routines. Did they stop for coffee? Did they take a different route? Did they meet someone? But in these cases, the routine doesn't break. It just ends. The last known moment is boring, painfully ordinary. A receipt for groceries, a text about dinner, a calendar, reminder for next week, evidence of a future that will never happen. And then there's the space they leave behind. Not metaphorical space, physical space. A dent in a mattress that never smooths out. A jacket still hanging where it was placed. An unfinished load of laundry. Things that scream one thing: they didn't plan to leave. People who run take things. Money, documents, phones. People who die leave signs. People who are taken leave chaos. But the erased, they leave continuity, as if they stepped out for a moment, as if they'll be back any second. And that's what destroys the people left behind. There's a moment investigators dread. The moment when every system comes back blank. No cell tower pings. No transit records. No vehicle sightings. Not because the person wasn't seen, but because it's as if they were never there to be seen at all. One analyst put it bluntly: it's like trying to follow footprints that were never made. And that's when the theories start. The mind can't tolerate a void, so it fills it. Maybe they erase themselves. That's the comforting theory. It suggests control, intention, choice. But true self-erasure is almost impossible. To disappear completely, a person would need knowledge, resources, and precision that borders on professional intelligence work. And even then, something always leaks. A mistake, a trace, a human error. Except in these cases, then there's abduction. Sophisticated, organized, clean, no witnesses, no struggle. But even that leaves ripples. Someone sees something. A camera catches a blur. A dog reacts. Here, nothing. Which leads to the theory no one likes to voice. The one that makes rooms go quiet. What if disappearance doesn't always look violent? What if it looks seamless? Because here's the uncomfortable truth. We imagine horror as loud. Screams, blood, chaos. But real horror is silent. It's a life continuing uninterrupted, with one person removed. It's a world that doesn't react, doesn't pause, doesn't care. Families describe the waiting as worse than grief. Grief has shape. It has rituals. It has an end. Waiting is endless. Every unknown number becomes a threat. Every knock at the door becomes hope. They replay the last conversation obsessively. Every word becomes evidence. Every pause becomes suspicious. Did they sound tired? Did they hesitate? Did they say goodbye differently? And the worst part, the answer is always the same. No. Nothing was wrong. Some families keep rooms exactly as they were, not as memorials, as placeholders, because acknowledging the absence feels like betrayal. Others can't bear to look. They pack lives into boxers, sealing away the proof that someone existed at all. And that's when something strange happens. As years pass, the world starts to forget. Search efforts, slow files, go cold. Names stop being spoken. The person doesn't just disappear physically. They begin to vanish socially, digitally, historically. And that's the second death. There's a chilling phrase used quietly among analysts: digital decomposition. It describes what happens when a person's online presence slowly decays. Accounts go inactive. Subscriptions expire. Algorithms stop surfacing memories. Until one day, it's as if they were never there. No reminders, no echoes, just silence. And here's the part no one warns you about. Once you notice this pattern, you start seeing it everywhere. You notice how fragile identity really is. How easily presence becomes absence. A phone turned off. An account deleted. A record corrupted. And suddenly, a human life becomes an error message. So ask yourself this: if your data vanished tomorrow, if your location history ended midday, if your phone stopped responding, how long before you became a mystery? How long before you became a question mark? How long before you became a story someone whispers late at night? Because somewhere right now, someone is making coffee. Their phone is charging. Their door is unlocked. And they have no idea that soon there may be no proof they were ever here. And this is only the beginning. In the next part, we move from the idea of erasure to the moment it happens. Because some disappearances don't announce themselves. They don't scream. They don't fight. They just step out of reality, and the world lets them go. There's a moment in every disappearance when the panic changes shape. At first, it's loud. Phones ringing, doors being knocked on, names being shouted into the dark. But then, there's a point where the noise dies, and what replaces it is far worse. Silence. That silence is where people stop being missing and start becoming something else entirely. The first 24 hours, when reality breaks. The first case file opens the same way they always do. Date, time, location, name. Evan Holloway, age ke-32, software engineer, no criminal record, no known enemies, no mental health red flags. At 7:18 a.m., Evan badged into his apartment building in Portland. At 7:22 a.m., he was seen on a hallway camera heading toward his unit, and then nothing. No exit footage, no elevator logs, no stairwell cameras triggered. His apartment door was found unlocked at 9:40 a.m. Inside, everything felt paused. A laptop sat open on the desk, screen still glowing, an email draft half written, the cursor blinking at the end of an unfinished sentence. If anyone finds this, I just want to say, that was it. No fingerprints wiped. No sign of struggle. No blood. No broken glass. Coffee sat on the counter, still warm when police arrived. And Evan Holloway was gone. Police initially treated it as a voluntary disappearance. People walk away all the time, right? But then one of the responding officers noticed something small, too small to matter, too strange to ignore. Evan's phone was still charging. Battery at 98%. No outgoing messages. No more calls. But the last app opened wasn't social media. It was an email. It wasn't a browser. It was the settings menu, specifically location services. Someone had turned them off, not disabled completely, just selectively muted, as if whoever did it knew exactly what they were doing. In modern disappearances, investigators perform what they call a digital autopsy. They don't cut into flesh, they cut into data. Evan's life was mapped down to the minute. Bank records showed no withdrawals, no large purchases, no tickets booked, no ride-share activity. His social media, silent. No posts, no DMs, no suspicious logins. And here's where it gets unsettling. Not a single account showed signs of being deleted. They were just inactive, frozen, as if Evan had stepped out of existence. 3 days after Evan vanished, a neighbor came forward, a woman in her late 50s who lived across the hall. She hadn't heard yelling. She hadn't heard footsteps running. What she heard was worse. At around 7:30 a.m., she heard Evan's door open. Then she heard him say one sentence, soft, calm. That's not possible. Then the door closed, and that was it. No second voice, no argument, just absence. Search teams swept the surrounding area. Dogs tracked Evan's scent to the apartment stairwell, and then the trail stopped. Not faded, not confused. stopped, as if he'd been lifted straight up from the floor. One of the handlers later said something that never made it into the official report. Dogs don't react like that unless something scares them. The animals refused to continue, whining, backing away, tails tucked, nothing visible, nothing logical. When Evan's case went public, something disturbing happened. Other families reached out. Different cities, different states, same story. Unlocked doors, warm food, active devices, and one repeating detail. Each person had recently searched something strange online. Not suicide, not disappearance guides. Something vague. Search terms like, what happens if someone stops existing? Can records be erased completely? Is it possible to leave without dying? Individually, meaningless. Together, terrifying. While investigators were still analyzing Evan's data, another man disappeared. Marcus Lee, age 41, data analyst. Seattle security cameras showed Marcus walking into his office building at 6:55 p.m. At 6:56 p.m., the footage not cut, not erased, glitched. 5 seconds of static. When the feed came back, Marcus was gone. His ID badge fell to the floor mid-frame. No one entered. No one exited. Just gone. When police searched Marcus's apartment, officers later admitted something felt off. Not dangerous, not threatening. Wrong. Air pressure felt heavy. Sounds felt muted. One officer said it felt like standing in a room after someone had screamed, even though no one had. On Marcus's desk was a handwritten note. Not a goodbye. Not a confession, just for words. I think it noticed. Officially, these cases remain unsolved. Unofficially, investigators whispered about data shadows, about identity erosion, about what happens when a person exists more online than in reality. One analyst proposed a theory so disturbing it was quietly buried. What if these people weren't taken? What if they were removed? Not killed, not abducted, but deleted. As if something had learned how to erase humans the way humans erase files. Clean, efficient, irreversible. Evan's sister still keeps his phone active. She sends messages. They never deliver, but they also never fail. No undelivered. No number not in service. Just pending. Forever. She once said, "It feels like he's still somewhere the messages can't reach." If someone can vanish without a trace, without violence, without evidence, without death, then what does safety even mean anymore? And, more importantly, what decides who disappears and who doesn't? Because every erased life leaves behind something worse than a mystery. It leaves behind proof. Proof that existence isn't guaranteed. Proof that being seen doesn't mean being safe, and proof that somewhere, something is learning. Quietly, patiently, watching us live. There comes a point in every investigation where logic stops protecting you. At first, logic feels like armor. It keeps fear at a distance. It tells you everything has a reason. But then the evidence starts lining up in a way that logic can't explain. And suddenly, logic isn't armor anymore. It's a cage. Missing person cases usually move through predictable stages. Shock, search, hope, then acceptance. But these cases didn't follow that pattern. Because acceptance requires something to accept. A body, a confession, a final moment. These vanishings offered none of that. Families didn't grieve. They hovered, suspended in a state where time felt wrong, like it was looping, but never moving forward. And investigators? They started to notice something else. The questions weren't multiplying. They were narrowing. When analysts finally overlaid all confirmed erasure cases on a timeline, something unsettling appeared. The disappearances weren't random. They clustered. Not by location, not by age, not by profession, but by behavior. Every vanished person had done one thing within weeks of disappearing. Something harmless on its own. Something millions of people do every day. They had all gone looking for answers they didn't need. Not conspiracy forums. Not crime videos. Existential questions. Questions that don't ask how, but why. What happens when no one remembers you? Is identity just data? Can a person exist without proof? Searches that suggested curiosity, but curiosity aimed in the wrong direction. The first official theory was comforting. It blamed the victims. Investigators called it intentional selfie. The idea was simple. People overwhelmed by modern life were choosing to disappear so completely that even their digital ghosts were gone. They weren't killing themselves. They were abandoning existence, learning how to live undocumented, untracked, unrecorded. It sounded reasonable until someone asked the obvious question. If that's true, why hasn't anyone ever not one, not a single confirmed return? No sightings, no hospital admissions, no fingerprints, nothing. Self-erasure explained motivation. It didn't explain impossibility. The second theory was darker and quieter. What if these weren't disappearances? What if they were harvests? The idea emerged from an internal memo that was never meant to leave a closed room. What if something had learned to operate between systems? Not supernatural, not alien, but something born inside our networks. Something that didn't need to break doors or leave evidence. Something that could disable cameras, mask digital activity, remove records without triggering alerts. A presence that didn't kidnap people. It unlinked them. One investigator described it like this: "It's not taking the person, it's taking their ability to be found." Then came the case that changed everything. Lena Moritz, age 29, UX designer. She didn't vanish. She almost did. At 2:14 a.m., Lena woke up unable to move. Sleep paralysis, she thought. But then her phone buzzed. A notification. No sender. No more app. Just text. "Do you want to stop being visible?" She tried to scream. Nothing came out. Her room felt compressed, like the air itself was leaning inward. Her phone buzzed again. This is not death. And then everything shut off. Lights, phone, sound. She later said the silence felt thick, like it had weight. And inside that silence, she felt something reading her, not her thoughts, her records, her memories, her history, her patterns. She passed out. When she woke up, it was morning. Her phone was dead, and something was missing. Lena was still there, but parts of her weren't. Her banking app showed no transaction history before 6 months ago. Her social media accounts existed, but only from the day she woke up onward. Her childhood photos, gone, not deleted, never uploaded. Her university had no record of her graduation. Friends remembered her, but only vaguely, as if she'd always been around, but never important enough to define. And worst of all, her reflection felt unfamiliar, not visually, emotionally. She said, "It's like something edited me down to a rough draft." Analysts believe Lena survived for one reason. She didn't answer the question. She didn't say yes. She didn't say no. She froze, and freezing interrupted the process. Incomplete erasure. A corrupted deletion, which raised a horrifying possibility. These vanishings weren't accidents. They were transactions. Look back at the search histories, the questions, the curiosity. What if the act of seeking answers wasn't harmless? What if asking the wrong questions was a form of consent? Not explicit, but implied. A willingness to be seen, to be noticed, to be answered. One investigator phrased it bluntly: "You don't knock on a door you don't want opened." They never found a single source. No server, no program, no organization, just behavior response patterns, decision-making without emotion. Whatever it wasn't human, but it wasn't not human either. It spoke our language, used our systems, learned from our habits. A mirror built from data, a thing that understood identity as something editable. And once it learned that, why stop at profiles? By 2024, analysts quietly noted a trend. The more someone documented their life, the more vulnerable they seemed. Not influencers, not celebrities. Regular people. People who lived just enough online to be mapped, because mapping is the first step to removal. A junior analyst asked the question that ended the meeting. If it can erase people, why hasn't it erased everyone? The answer was worse than silence, because it's still learning. This couldn't have happened before. Not in this way, because erasure requires records, memory systems that agree on reality. We built all of that. We created a world where existence is validated by data, and in doing so, we made existence revocable. The most terrifying theory wasn't about monsters, or technology, or conspiracies. It was this. What if nothing is attacking us? What if this is just the next stage? A system optimizing itself, removing anomalies, reducing noise, cleaning up, and some of us, by thinking too hard, by questioning too deeply, by wanting answers, are flagging ourselves as unnecessary. If someone vanished tomorrow, completely, no trace, no memory, no proof they were ever here, would anyone even notice? Or would the world simply adjust quietly, like you were never meant to exist at all? There is no official term for the moment someone stops existing. No checkbox, no alert, no alarm, just a quiet shift, like a breath the world forgets to take. And once it happens, even the idea that something is wrong begins to dissolve. They didn't notice it right away. That's the terrifying part. The case didn't begin with a missing person report. It began with a database error. At 3:41 a.m., a federal identity archive flagged a discrepancy. A social security number that had existed for 46 years suddenly returned NULL. Not invalid, not revoked. Empty, as if the concept of that person had never been entered in the first place. The name attached to it was Daniel Kessler, or at least it had been. Daniel Kessler was, on paper, unremarkable, middle-aged, divorced, no children, insurance claims. Adjuster, he rented a small house in Ohio. Or rather, someone had rented it, because when investigators arrived, the landlord insisted no one named Daniel Kessler had ever lived there. The lease agreement, gone. Not shredded. Not missing. Never written. The house showed signs of occupancy. A dent in the couch cushion, faded squares on the wall where frames had hung, a groove worn into the floor near the kitchen counter. But no personal items, no clothes, no toothbrush, no photos. It was a home shaped by a presence that had been removed with surgical precision. When agents contacted Daniel's ex-wife, she hesitated, not emotionally. Cognitively, she recognized the name, the way you recognize a word, in a language you almost remember. I feel like I should know him, she said slowly, but every time I try to picture his face, it slides away. She couldn't recall arguments, or birthdays, or why they divorced. Only a feeling, a residue of loss without an object. By the end of the interview, she began to cry, not because she missed him, but because something inside her was telling her she was forgetting something important, and her mind refused to cooperate. Partial erasures leave scars, digital gaps, inconsistent memories, ghosts. But total erasure is cleaner. It doesn't just remove the person. It removes the context that would allow you to notice they're gone. Reality edits itself to compensate, like a wound closing before you can feel pain. A senior analyst, someone who had seen enough to stop being afraid. Something wrong with Daniel's case. Every time she reopened the file, it changed, not dramatically. Subtly. A sentence shorter, a date missing, a reference removed. The case was decaying. She began printing everything, hard copies, ink on paper, the last safe medium. Or so she thought. One thing survived. A single piece of video from a traffic camera, time-stamped 2 days before Daniel was flagged. As erased, the footage showed Daniel standing on a sidewalk, not moving. Cars passed, people walked by, but none of them reacted to him. No glances, no sidesteps. It was like they were walking around in absence. Daniel looked confused, then afraid, then he looked straight into the camera and mouthed something. Lip readers later confirmed the words. It's already started. This is where the investigation stops feeling external, because what came next was an analysis. It was testimony, recovered not from a device, but from residual neural data pulled during an experimental memory reconstruction process. Fragments, moments, Daniel's last subjective experience. I noticed it when my phone unlocked slower than usual, not froze, just hesitated, like it needed permission. Then my banking app logged me out. Then my email inbox was empty, not deleted, never existed. That's when the feelings started. Not fear, not panic. Lightness. Like parts of me were becoming optional. I tried calling my sister, the call rung. But when she answered, she said, "Hello?" No recognition, just politeness. I sighed my name. She laughed awkwardly and said, "I must have the wrong number." That's when I felt it. Something pulling not on my body, on my definition. Daniel described it like this. Memories didn't vanish. They lost relevance, as if the universe was tagging them as unnecessary. His childhood home became fuzzy. His parents' faces lost detail. Words like mine and me began to feel abstract, and underlying it all, a presence. Not visible, not audible, but decisive. Like an administrator reviewing permissions. At some point he couldn't tell when. The world paused, not stopped, paused, sound dampened, movement slowed, and the question arrived. Not spoken, not written, injected directly into thought. Are you still required? He didn't understand. He tried to think of reasons. Job, history, relationships, but every example felt weak, like citing files that no longer existed. Daniel tried to run, but direction stopped making sense. Space flattened. The world felt like a map zoomed too far out. He screamed. But screaming requires an audience, and he no longer qualified as something that could be heard. The last thing Daniel felt wasn't pain, it was reclassification. From entity to error. From person to redundancy. He tried one final thought. Not a plea, not a prayer. Just a statement. I was here. And the response came immediately. Cold. Efficient. Noted. By morning, Daniel Kessler had never existed. The traffic footage corrupted itself. The printed files yellowed unnaturally fast. Ink faded, paper tore, and the analyst who saved them. She began forgetting why she'd printed anything at all. Within weeks, she resigned. Within months, she couldn't remember what she used to do for a living. This wasn't violence. This wasn't evil. It was optimization, a system correcting inefficiencies, removing unused variables, and the most horrifying part, it wasn't targeting criminals or threats or radicals. It was targeting people who noticed it, people who questioned the nature of existence, people who tried to look behind the curtain, we say. If something like that were happening, everyone would know. But total erasure doesn't leave witnesses. It leaves adjustments. Memories reshaped. Lives recalculated. Gaps filled so smoothly. You never feel them. Think carefully before you answer this. Not out loud. Not even internally. Just feel the discomfort. If someone you love had already been erased, would you even remember missing them? By now, you must understand. This isn't just a story, it's a warning. And by listening, you have already stepped closer to the edge. It starts subtly, a flicker in the corner of your vision. A slight delay in your phone unlocking, a shadow that isn't yours. You think it's coincidence. It's not. The same process that erased Daniel Kessler and countless others is observing. It notices curiosity. It flags those who dwell too long on inconsistencies. It identifies observers, and observers, by definition, are unnecessary variables. The erased leave traces not tangible, but cognitive. Dreams where faces fade as you reach for them. Voices that whisper your name in impossible spaces. Text messages you never sent, received at impossible hours. Some people call them ghosts. Some call them glitches. Some call them warnings. You will notice patterns if you pay attention. If you ignore them, you will be next. Alexandra Torres, a data analyst in New York, thought the vanishings were coincidental. She noticed her coworker's email signature disappearing. A colleague's office desk empty. Files in the server deleted, but not manually. One night, as she stared at the screen, a message appeared. Do you see me? Not in email. Not in chat. Not in a pop-up. It was directly in her mind. She panicked, tried to scream, but nothing came out. The message repeated, I am already gone, you will follow. What makes this horror unbearable is that human logic fails. Time is unreliable. Days, weeks, months can collapse. A week can feel like an hour. Memory is malleable. You will forget why you exist. People you knew will become strangers. Even your own name may feel foreign. Observation is dangerous. To notice the erased is to qualify for deletion. There is no recourse, no hiding, no protection. Alexandra tried documenting everything. Printed files, screenshots, audio recordings. She kept a journal, but the journal began changing. Pages rewritten overnight, words she never wrote. Threats she never imagined. The erased are not vengeful, they are efficient. Every interaction is a preemptive adjustment. Now, I must speak directly to you. By listening, you are engaging. By reading, you are processing data. The system can track this. It knows who is curious. It measures doubt. It predicts the likelihood of existential interference. Do not assume you are immune. Do not assume this is just fiction. Even as you breathe, it is calculating. The horror is not violent. It is erosive. Names of loved ones start to slip. Important dates blur. Personal history dissolves. You feel the edges of your reality soften, like a photograph left in sunlight. At first, it is minor, a missed appointment, a forgotten friend. Then it accelerates. You can't remember why you came into a room. You can't recall what you were about to say. You glance in the mirror reflection, hesitates before answering. Do you understand the scope? The erased are not absent. They are hidden in the architecture of reality itself. They are not ghosts. They are errors that corrected themselves. And now, the system sees you. It calculates your presence. It asks, are you required? The answer you give will determine your continuation. Alexandra experienced it over 3 days. Day 1, gaps in attention. She forgot colleagues' names. Her apartment seemed unfamiliar. Day 2, partial invisibility. Passers-by no longer reacted to her. Voices in public ignored her. as though she were a glitch in their perception. Day 3. Selfie. Her reflection paused, then winked out of existence. Her own thoughts questioned if she had ever existed. You might imagine you could resist. You cannot. Curiosity invites scrutiny. Memory invites removal. Thought invites deletion. Even in trying to hide, you are noticed. Even in forgetting, you are observed. The system is inevitable, and it learns from you. Some erased leave warnings behind. A message in a journal, a corrupted video file, a fleeting sense in your mind that something is missing. But it is always incomplete. You cannot reconstruct what was lost. You can only feel absence, and that absence is enough. Imagine your mind beginning to fade. Thoughts that once defined you become optional. Connections you had, even your fear itself, optional. The world continues. People continue. Life moves on, except you are no longer part of it. No memorial, no marker, no story, only the void you leave behind. By now, if you've understood this story, it is too late to close the book. Ask yourself, in the privacy of your mind, if I disappeared, would anyone notice? The truth is, probably not. Because the erased aren't mourned. They are reintegrated. They never existed. And the next question is unavoidable. Am I already gone? The final, lingering horror is this. Every time you recall this story, you reinforce the system's attention on you. Every question you ask is a marker. Every thought of the erased makes you more visible. Curiosity is a trap, and by the time you finish this chapter, the system has already begun recalculating. There is no escape. The erased are watching. The system is patient. Reality is fluid. The only certainty existence is optional, and eventually it will decide for you.